So welcome to the latest edition of the Whole Man Academy podcast. Today I'm joined by a guy that I've known for about a year or so, and we'll talk about that. But today I'm joined by Bret Hollywood Freeman. Welcome, Bret. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, Scott. How are you? It's really good to see you.
I've been dying to call you that since I first met you, Bret. I think I'm great, but I think you better tell our listeners why you've got this amazing middle name, Bret. Where did that come from?
Yeah, sure. So I've got kind of a long, sordid, strange career, I think, as we'll probably get into.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I did for, I guess about 10 years is I was one of Europe's premier ring announcers for boxing and for mixed martial arts, cage fighting, snooker, that sort of thing. And as kind of adopting a persona, trying to figure out how to do things a bit differently, when I first started in this gig, I have kind of a weird passion, obsession for Jeffrey West boots and nice jackets. And so I was probably the first guy ever to stand in the center of a cage fighting ring with a gold sequin jacket and matching gold boots. Somebody said, "Hey, Hollywood," and it just kind of stuck.
Yeah, I was going to say you're looking quite dressed down today on the YouTube channel here, Bret.
Yeah.
So how did you get into doing that? Because that's not something that you have a career path from university to being an MC.
Yeah, so I came to the UK. I met my wife. My wife's British. And I was working in IT in America.
Okay.
And we worked for the same company. I was running the global services division. She was running Europe. She was the MD of Europe. So when I came over, decided, we were going to get married, went to the company and said, look, you can either transfer me. I've got a global remit, or I can find another job. They said, no, we'll transfer you. So they transferred, married my wife. And when I got here, I realized, I don't have any friends. I left everything in America.
Yes.
So as I'm working with this organization here in Europe now, and I've always had a background in martial arts. I wrestled all through high school and Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu, those sort of things.
Yeah.
And when I got here, I thought, I know where I'll find some friends. I'll go find a gym. And on the way to work one day, kind of coincidentally, about 1.5 miles from my house, there was a big sign that said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I said, hey, just up my street. So I called him up, and the guy, Zé Marcello, who's the Jiu-Jitsu professor there, and he says, oh, yeah, bro, come on down. Well, yeah, we'd love to have you. And so anyway, I went down, started training, right? So little did I know, in this little tiny shack, kind of middle of nowhere, there was all of these British champions, UFC veterans. I mean, this was like the Lion's Den, right? And so I don't know whether I'm brave or stupid, but I'll kind of stand in front of anyone, really. So I started training with these guys, and one of them had a show coming up, and he says, "Oh, you've got an American accent. Do you want to come and be my MC?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So I did that. So I went and I MC'd that show, and it went out on Sky Sports and a bunch of channels all over the world, and then my phone just started ringing, and I just kind of never looked back.
Incredible.
So accidentally.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, if our listeners look online for your name and they find one of your videos, you do have an incredible voice.
Oh, thank you.
You do. I mean, it's really, really noticeable. And I am, although we've known each other for about a year, I'm certain I know your voice from
like
another
I said,
space.
I've done quite a lot of big shows. I've done big boxing events. I've done Matchroom, world title fights.
Yeah.
I did the snooker. I've done all sorts of bits and pieces. So chances are, if you've not seen me, you've probably heard me somewhere.
Yes. And what's the most memorable moment from that experience that as an MC?
Oh gosh, as an MC, there were a lot of really memorable moments. I did a fantastic dinner with Anthony Joshua one time. This was
right.
Gosh, going back a couple of years now, and it was great because the setup, it was for charity. And so we had a charity night, we had auction, we had the whole thing. And then kind of the highlight of the evening, I introduced Anthony Joshua. He came in and we sat on stage for about an hour and I just interviewed him.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. It was really, really good. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I've had a lot of really been fortunate, big experiences, big venues, sold out Sheffield Arena, the O2, so big
Wow.
audiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you prepare for something like that?
Yeah, yeah, that's I guess everybody kind of prepares differently, don't they? So
Yeah.
I tend to um, I'm a bit of a detail freak in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So, turn up really early and make sure I talk to everybody that I'm going to be introducing that night, check their name pronunciations, check everything, make sure I'm talking with the venue, with the promoter, with whoever's going to be, my back of house, because we've got to coordinate. I've got to know when fighters are coming out, et cetera, et cetera. So I think just really combing over everything, because if something goes wrong, whether it's my fault or not, I'm the one in front of the camera, so it's my fault.
Yeah, it's your fault. Yes. Yeah. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that I think, our audience is the sort of male between 25 and 45. A lot of them are going through career transitions. Now, you've obviously gone through, and keep me right, but you were working in technology. You then continued to do that, but you were doing some MCing, and you've made another transition, which I'd love to talk in detail about later. But how does one make that transition between careers successfully, Brett? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's tricky. What one of my friends at one point said something to me that really made a lot of sense. He says, "You know what, Brett? No matter what you're doing, chase your highest excitement. Always chase your highest excitement." Right.
Okay.
And when I had a really successful IT career, both in America and here. And at that point, you're sort of young and chasing the money. And at that point, that was my sort of highest excitement. But you're always kind of chasing the next thing, right? When I got into MC work, and that led into a bit of a television career, again, it was just chasing that excitement. And what I found with the MC work is that I really enjoyed the audience feedback.
Okay.
That was the best part for me. And I'd done, even when I was in IT, I was doing keynotes and doing all, kind of the IT trade show route.
Yeah.
I even, believe it or not, have a background in America in the Southern Baptist Church. So I was a licensed Southern Baptist preacher. So
yeah.
if you want to learn public speaking, there's nowhere better than the pulpit in Meridian, Mississippi, I tell you.
Wow. Yeah. Well, at least, this could be a 5-hour podcast. I'm starting to worry.
So I had lots of career change. Before that, I was in the U.S. Navy.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lots of career change, and I think the key is that is, as I said, kind of chasing that excitement. I've been very fortunate in that when I have made those transitions, for the most part, financially, I've been able to support myself through those transitions.
Okay.
The last couple since I've married my wife's an IT executive. So she gives me so much support, mentally, physically, and financially now. If I've got, some crazy idea, Julia, I want to do this thing, and, it's going to cost X. And she's, yeah, okay.
Right. Okay.
So I'm really lucky there, because she gives me, loads of support, and she's my greatest fan. So that's pretty fortunate, because if I decided tomorrow I wanted to do something else, she would support me.
Right. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Is there anything on reflection that you would have done differently?
I would have started sooner. I would have started on the career I'm in now sooner.
Really?
Definitely. But beyond that, I mean, we're all just having a big adventure, aren't we? So I think that we do what we do, and every step leads to the next, and every learning experience equips us for whatever is coming down the road. So whether I do anything different, I don't necessarily know that I would.
Okay. And you've just touched on the career you're doing now. So can you tell us what you're doing now with your work?
Yeah. So now I'm an executive leadership coach. I am a trainer and facilitator, keynote speaker. I do a lot of work for lots of organizations. I work quite a bit with an organization called the Neurolinguistic Institute. And so that has taken me down a really, really interesting path studies in neuroscience and a real grounding in neuroscience concepts and how they apply to leadership.
Okay.
So that's really excited me. But that, again, talking about how steps prepare you for the next thing, the way I sort of found my way here is I was working as an MC for a matchroom program, and it's called the Weber Cup, which is a 10-pin bowling thing. It's really weird. There's an American team and a European team, and It happens every year. And the fans are nuts. I mean, the fans come out, blue hair, face paint, it's a brilliant event. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But as I was working this event, there was the anchor of the show, a guy called Tony Wright, and Tony, he's also a Sky Sports presenter.
Right.
And so we got to talking over dinner one time, and I kind of, I've always had an interest in psychology. I took psychology in school and college, and he started talking about NLP. And I had been sort of around the fringes of NLP, but wasn't really, kind of knew a bit, but not much.
What does NLP stand? What does NLP stand for, Brett? Sorry.
Neurolinguistic programming.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So Tony started telling me all about his adventures and how NLP kind of helped him to be better in his job. Using these techniques gave him better confidence. I thought, oh, interesting. Okay. So I then signed up for an initial NLP practitioner course. Went through that course, absolutely loved it, learned loads. It made a lot of the things, like a lot of my behaviors all of a sudden started to make sense. And then I could start to see those in other people. That led me on to a full-blown NLP master's program, and a master NLP coach with that as well, and master hypnotist. So I've gone through all of that training, which then ultimately got me to thinking, as I look a bit deeper into NLP, you're right. So where does this stuff come from? And because some of it's really great, and some of it's really kind of out there and just kind of I just couldn't quite buy it. So as I started to kind of look into the background and started looking into where all these things came, it sort of brought me down the neuroscience route. And as I started to sort of devour everything I could get my hands on from a neuroscience perspective, then it sort of well-rounded. But it all came from that MC job where I sat with Tony having dinner on a TGI Fridays.
Yes. We've had a very similar route with respect to some of that. Could you talk a little bit more about NLP is quite faddish, and personally I think it's a bit of a cult.
Yes.
You just have to go and do the training to see that. However, I think it helped me as well, to be honest, because although I was a scientist originally, I ended up doing NLP, which is not scientific. But then you've made the leap. What helped you see the bits of that were perhaps made up? There is. It's difficult to do this in an hour, but it's an interesting, because there's a lot of people out there now talking about what does evidence mean, what are facts, how important are opinions. I know this is quite a heavy subject, and we don't need to go down the rabbit hole, Brett, but how would you advise somebody to look at something like this? I know it's a huge question.
Yeah. I think, and again, this was probably more by luck than judgment.
Right.
Because when I went to sign up for an NLP course, I wasn't necessarily looking at the schools, the instructors, what they brought. I was looking for something to fit my schedule.
Right. Well, that's honest. Yes.
And the one that I happened to find, because I sort of describe NLP as a whole, it's kind of a wedge, right? And there's sort of the thick end of the wedge, which is the sort of sales manipulative, that kind of stuff. Because NLP can be really, really manipulative. And there's a lot of guys that are making a living out of teaching you, and they're quite forthright about it. Let me teach you how to make people buy. Let me teach you, whatever. But then you get down to the sort of the thin end of the wedge, and there is a scholarly end to NLP.
Yeah.
And the course that I happened to go on, the instructor sat right there at the thin end of the wedge, which again was really fortunate for me. So he turned me on to a lot of other stuff, a lot of other reading. And as you start to kind of explore this stuff and understand why things work the way they work, as you say, NLP is not necessarily scientific, But some of the NLP techniques I can explain with neuroscience.
Yeah.
I get why things work, right?
Yeah.
So I think that just having your eyes wide open, figuring out where it is you're going, looking at how, even in the pitch that the school's making themselves, how manipulative is that towards you, etc.
Yes. And do you find, I mean, you've taken the leap into the sort of David Rock's Neuro Leadership Institute. What's that about? What can you tell people what that's about?
So NLI, Neuro Leadership Institute, is amazing. I mean, of all of the organizations that I work for, I absolutely love what NLI brings to the table.
Okay.
So David Rock, he is what he calls creating a new language for leadership.
All right. Okay.
And so everything that NLI brings to the table is 1,000% research based.
Yeah.
So why do we behave the way we do? Why do our salespeople, make targets, don't make targets? How are we, evaluating one another? How are we helping people to grow? What's actually the science behind that, and what's the best approach?
Right. Okay. Okay.
So I mean, that sort of foundation of everything is, and I won't go into detail, let your listeners go look it up, but the NLI SCARF model, which talks about where our social brain, where we find ourselves in a threat state versus a reward state, and what a threat state can actually do to us, and how, in fact, most of the world walks around in a threat state most of the time. You wonder why we're not productive. Right?
Yes. I imagine that's got particular resonance at the moment because we're recording this in May 2020.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so the thing that we're dealing with is the uncertainty, right? That's one of the five social domain. The C in SCARF stands for certainty. And because we have so much uncertainty at the moment, we tend to be constantly under threat. And the thing that happens is when we're under threat, the thinking part of our brain, the part that's in the front, the prefrontal cortex, almost goes offline, because our emotional brain, the limbic system, causes all sorts of chemicals to swirl around. And one of those things is cortisol, and our prefrontal cortex hates cortisol. And when cortisol comes, it goes away. And so now we can't even think rationally. Yeah. And the longer we stay in that state, and the more we kind of cycle and spiral down, then the harder it is to come back.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And how you observing things that are happening in the media? How do you feel about that? Are we getting it right? Are we getting it right? Or are we getting it wrong?
Are we getting it right? I careful how I answer here. Have you read Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent? I mean, that's where we're at, right? I mean, I guess I find, again, I'll be careful how I phrase this, but I find it interesting what we're seeing, what the media is choosing to share, what they're not choosing to share. I find what the current government has been doing within the leadership quite interesting. So we had, Boris Johnson kind of in the hospital with the virus, and nobody should have to suffer that. So pleased that he's on the mend, and pleased that he's back in. But it seems like what they're doing is almost kind of bringing him out when he's got some good news. Yeah. Right. And then he goes in hiding again, and then more good news. And so what he's doing from a neuroscience perspective is he's conditioning people to like to see him. Yes. Right. So all of a sudden he kind of got better, or what my wife says, it's funny, Boris rose from the dead on Easter Sunday. Well, okay. Yeah. You can make that leap if you want. But now as lockdown is will be starting to kind of ease up, I think we'll see him making more statements. But the statements he'll be making won't be about death tolls or hospitalizations or figures. His statements will be about, and now you can go see your family members, and now you can go get a haircut, and now you can go, and so he's got some interesting advisors that are firmly grounded in NLP, and you can see it if you've got the background. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, it's almost a Pavlovian response, isn't it, that they're developing. What about our friend across the water? Well, Chomper Stan. Yeah, he's a whole nother kettle of fish, isn't he? But again, he's got very similar similar advisors, I think. And he's almost, I don't know whether the scariest part is the things he does and says, or if it's scarier that there are actually people who support the things he does and says.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, he's certainly playing to an audience, and he knows, like any good marketeer, he knows his audience. He's going to play to his audience, and if the people that aren't in his audience, they're not keen, he doesn't care, because his audience is a majority. So he's going to continue to do that, right? Yeah.
It's interesting, because I think, I don't know, I'd like to hear what you think about, whether it's changed you. But one of the things that's happened to me during the COVID crisis is that I think before COVID, I had what I think, and I might be wrong, I mean, I need to look back on this, but I had a very positive perception of people, and a very positive, I don't use the word belief very often, but an almost positive belief that good would be dominant, that people would not be fooled by nonsense, and not be fooled by the likes of Trump and other, like David Icke's been making the news a lot with his nonsense. But unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people being sucked into that. And it does slightly worry me that maybe I'm just getting this wrong, Brett, and I'm quite prepared to say I'm getting it wrong. But, I would never have said that we shouldn't allow people to be on the media. And I'd love Trump not to be allowed to be on the media. Unfortunately, that's not possible. But sorry if I'm being political there, but I don't really care. I would like to be able to ban him, because I know that people will inject themselves with disinfectant because of what he's saying. And it's kind of reduced me a little bit. I mean, I feel lesser for that. And I'm a very positive person normally. I don't know, has it had any impact on you either way, or how are you boxing it to deal with it?
Yeah, I suppose we're just a couple of old bastards, right? And we just get grouchy and cynical the older we get.
That could be it.
I mean, the same. And I suppose the thing that saddens me the most is when there's something that is so blatantly ridiculous. Inject yourself with chemicals, whatever. And the thing that saddens me is that people don't stop to investigate and think, hang on a second, is that a good idea? And sort of blindly following whatever they happen to be. And people have been doing it for, since the beginning of time. And some to more detriment than others, right? But I mean, you're always going to have charismatic leaders that rise up, people follow because they're charismatic, not necessarily because they make sense. And again, you can track that since the beginning of time, and whether it's it's not always a religious cult. Sometimes it's it's a political cult. Sometimes an NLP cult. Sometimes it's a whatever. But it's the charisma, when somebody recognizes the fact that they are a bit charismatic and can get a following, right? L. Ron Hubbard's famous quote at the party that says, "You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write a book and start a religion." Yeah, and he did. Welcome to Scientology, right? So when people start to recognize that they're a bit charismatic, and they can then say, "Oh, and I can actually use this to kind of manipulate people." Then we get on a slippery slope, right?
Yes. Yeah. I got into trouble once for calling NLP Scientology without the spaceships. Anyway, just finally on this point, because I really want to get back into your current work, Brett, if that's all right. But
sure.
How would you advise our listeners to deal with the media then? What would you suggest they do? Because a lot of it is that slightly silly or negative. How would you suggest to deal with it?
Yeah, so I think when you're on a diet, they tell you should eat little and often. I think you should snack on the media little and seldom.
Great advice.
and just check things out, man. We the problem with that, we all sort of live in our social media bubbles. So you're very rarely going to see anybody whose opinion disagrees with your own, because you're all friends, and that's what brought you together on social media. And if that's where you're getting your news, right?
Right. Okay. Great
And
advice. Thank you very much. Now, how we met, I think is worth talking about because I think we'd heard of each other from various mutual friends and things, but we had never actually met. And we met on the TEDx stage, didn't we?
we did, yes.
Yeah.
TEDx Telford, yeah.
Yeah, that was great fun, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. What was good about it? What did you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I think the whole experience that was I'd done a couple of TED Talks.
You said, yeah.
That wasn't my first. I think when we met, I actually turned up and was writing my talk when you came up and introduced yourself. Yeah, and I think gosh, that the people that were involved, not only the other speakers, but the staff that put it all together was just absolutely brilliant.
They were lovely, weren't they?
Yeah, and I've known Sam for a long time, and she's just amazing. So,
Nice.
yeah, I think just making new friends. I mean, that's what life's all about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was Sam Warner you were talking about there, who does a lot of TEDx coaching, etc. As do you, don't you? You've done.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is it? Do you think that the TED movement has become, it's ubiquitous, isn't it? I mean, it's everywhere.
It is, yeah.
Why do you think it's worked?
I think that TED had an initial really amazing impact.
Yeah.
Right. When sort of the first TED Talks started to emerge, because it was fresh, it was new, it was something kind of cool. I think that now people who aspire to impact or influence, that they sort of chase the TED Talk, right? And TED is a way that they can kind of scale what the TED stage is, right?
Yes.
So yeah, and I think it's great. I mean, obviously there's varying quality of TED Talks, across the board. But it's a great sort of bite-sized nugget of information, nugget of learning that you can pick up in, some are as short as 5 or 6 minutes, some are 18 minutes.
Yes.
So so I think it's just quick bite-sized learning, and that's what we like, so we can move to the next thing.
Yeah. If you were going to recommend your favorite TED or TEDx talk, what would it be?
Oh, that's a really good question. I really liked, and this is probably a bit old hat now, but I really liked Simon Sinek's original Start With Why talk.
Yeah, the one just with the flip chart, the simple one.
That had massive impact on me personally. Absolutely fantastic. That's probably one of my favorite. Again, Amy Cuddy's very first TED Talk. Fantastic. Yes. I mean, how long you got? I can give you a list.
Yeah. There's many of them.
Yeah.
Many of them. Yeah. I like Ken Robinson's talks, all of them, whether it's a TED or a TEDx. I think he's amazing. But okay, so how let's go to what you're doing now. I said I'd come back to it. I mean, I'm really, all of this is coalescing towards what Hollywood is doing now.
Yeah.
And you talked about doing coaching and mentoring, training, speaking, etc. So how does that experience funnel into what you're doing now with your clients?
Yeah, so I've been involved with Toastmasters International for a long time.
Oh, what's that? Tell us what that is.
So Toastmasters International is a public speaking organization. Mm-hmm. They started in America 100 years ago. And they, I don't know what the current member count is, over 300,000 members across the globe.
Is it? Wow.
Huge organization. Really great for people who are looking to grow personally, looking to develop not only speaking skills, but leadership skills.
Right.
I initially joined, I mean, I already had a television career. I was already doing keynotes. I initially joined and I thought, oh yeah, this will be pretty fun. And I've got an opportunity to kind of stage to experiment with some new concepts and ideas. Little did I know how much learning I was going to gain from my journey there so far.
Okay.
In fact, I've just completed and been awarded what's called the Distinguished Toastmaster Award, which is their the top of their award. So I've completed.
Oh, congratulations!
Higher education. Yeah, thank you. Education leadership program. But I've had some great opportunities. I've written a mentoring program that has been released throughout Toastmasters. Quite a few Toastmasters groups throughout Europe and even into America are using the stuff that I created, which is great. I've been on some big stages with Toastmasters. I just did a keynote presentation last Sunday for their virtual conference, over 1,000 people on virtual attendance. So it was good. Yeah. Yeah. So that's been really good. And so I guess back to your question, how does it kind of all culminate? So the public speaking stuff has been great. Having an opportunity to coach other people that are looking to be speakers has been great. But then kind of touching back on my work with NLI. So the other thing, so I am a brain-based certified coach through NLI, and I also teach the brain-based coaching certification course for them. Which is a 16 weeks plus, about 17-week course.
Oh, right.
Which is pretty exciting and pretty. I've done lots of coaching courses myself, and the NLI one is pretty interesting because it takes kind of a different tact. Again, it's all neuroscience based and research based, so kind of brings you in a different angle, right?
So talking about, sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to capture it. You're talking about coaching speakers, and what are the biggest mistakes that you come across with new speakers?
Yeah, I number one is speakers trying to be somebody else. I mean, that's it, right? Don't try to speak like me. Speak like you. Right? I used to, when I first started coaching speakers, I used to have some kind of hard, fast things that I would always teach. But then as I sort of progressed, I realized that, well, maybe the hard, fast things I always teach aren't best for every speaker, right? So being a bit fluid, and I think that we all, a lot of courses that I've been on have done exactly that. Here's the formula. If you want to be a speaker, follow this formula. Well, if you want to be a speaker, just talk about what you know, and your passion comes out. Then you're authentic. Then you don't have to write down and try to memorize a script. Just talk about what you know.
Yes. Always tell the truth. You don't need to remember it, do you?
That's exactly right.
And how? I mean, I've actually read your piece about virtual speaking and how to approach it, but I suspect our listeners haven't. So what's the big difference? Because a lot of us are now, whether we like it or not, are having to think about doing what we are doing today, doing virtual conversations. What's the difference, or is there a difference?
There's a huge difference. When we're face to face, if you and I are sitting in a room having this discussion, we're going to do all sorts of things. Our chemistry, our brains, we've got these things called mirror neurons, which our faces make thousands of adjustments every minute to mirror the person across from us, right? And not only that, but we also end up with mirror neurons help us to mirror emotion, mirror voice tone, mirror mood, emotion, everything, right? When we're doing this, they don't work so well. Right. So that's a huge difference. So it's much harder to make that connection virtually. Right. I don't know necessarily, depending on how many people are on a call. Right. This is my favorite question. Do you know what the ideal number of people for a conference call is virtually like this?
No idea.
2.
I would have said 2. That is what I would have said. But I didn't think I was right.
No, because our brains tend to get, again, if you go back to that sort of threat state, right? Our brains get distracted really easy, and the reason why is because we're always scanning for threat. And if I have to keep track of 15 people on a screen, I'm always scanning for changes. And if I'm always scanning for changes, I'm not paying full attention to you.
You're distracted,
right? So the hardest thing about being virtual is reducing distractions, right? Simple backgrounds, right? Well lit, not your camera not looking up your nose. So because if I just do this, now all of a sudden you might feel a bit intimidated because I'm standing above you looking down, right?
It's amazing how many people do that. They're looking down. It's amazing.
It's by design, right? I mean, your laptop, you open your laptop and there's your camera and you're always looking down. But on a stack of books, and then it's eye level, right? Much easier.
Which is exactly what I've got here.
Exactly. Look at your camera. If I look at your picture, now I'm looking at your picture. Am I making eye contact?
No, you're not. You got to look at the camera, haven't you?
I don't need to look at your picture to talk to you. I'm looking at the camera to talk to you. Right? Because it's just more engaging. So it does. It takes some practice, but there are some kind of some basics that you can do, right? Wearing like the way you're dressed. So smart jacket, solid color shirt, but nothing fancy and
No.
distracting, right?
Yeah.
Because the key is all about I need to remove as much friction as I possibly can from the people on the other side of the camera, right?
Sage advice.
They call
Great
that fluency, right? So
Okay.
fluency, if I can be as fluent as possible, fluency is, things like even accents. So you and I have different accents. So we'll have to think a little bit harder when we listen to each other than we would if we were talking to somebody who had the same accent as we do. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of disfluency there. Not too bad, but a little bit of disfluency, right?
Yes.
But there's also disfluency if when you're using, presentation tools, you use different fonts. If I write something in Times New Roman, you're going to get it right away. Whereas if I write it in some fancy script, you have to just think a little bit harder about what does that say? And you want to remove as much friction as you can when you're virtual, because our brains get tired. I mean, people spending all day on a Zoom call. You're knackered at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
Your brain's working so hard.
Yes. That's been something that I found a lot of people who jumped on the Zoom and other platforms are available.
Of course.
And it got like, I don't know how it went with you, but I had a diary 5 days packed with Zoom calls, and I had to step away. I just had to step away because I was so tired by the end of it that I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, well, we get. I mean, the other thing that when you're having multiple calls, it forces you to. People call it multitasking, but actually our brains can't multitask.
No.
What we do is we task switch, right? And task switching is cognitively expensive because I have to get out of the frame of mind I'm in now into the frame of mind to talk about the other thing. Yeah. Then back into the frame, right? And so the more switching we do, the more cognitive resource we're using, and we all have limited cognitive resource. Right? So Zoom call. Yes. That's why people are so tired. And a lot of people didn't necessarily see that coming when we changed to this format. Now everybody's saying, "Gosh, I don't understand. All I do is sit and talk on video. Why am I so tired?" Well, it's because your brain is in overdrive all day long, right?
Yes. That's terrific observations and advice for our listeners. Thank you, Bret. That really is useful. Thank you. And how do you think this is going to change, or is it going to change when we get back to whatever the new normal is? Yeah.
So I think it will change quite significantly. In fact, I'm working on another body of work now that I'm calling The Shift.
Right. Okay.
And so as we look at what's going to happen next, obviously the things are going to change. So when I talk about the shift, I talk about, what's the situation, what was it, what is it, and what's it going to be. Yeah. Right? I talk about what habits do we have, what habits are we creating now that are potentially bad habits that will ultimately take into our workplace. Okay. Right? When we get unlocked, that's going to be a problem. Eyes for influence. So what is that influence that we potentially have now and will then? As you look at businesses in any crisis, businesses, there's kind of three phases, right? And the first phase is just paralyzation. Businesses stop. They think, gosh, I don't know what to do now, right? Yeah. The second phase is adaptation. Okay, how do I do what I do now, but in this new world? Yeah. And then the third one, and the most important one, and the businesses that are successul, is change. Yeah. Outright, complete, and utter change, because things are different. So let's change our business model. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it comes out in the wash, as they say, because I think some businesses have potentially committed, commercial suicide by the way they have behaved, during this period. So it's not only the how they do it, it's the way they've responded. Virgin comes to mind, Wetherspoons comes to mind in the UK, certainly. And I do wonder where, how the public are going to respond post. And I think what we're going to see as well is, so a lot of particularly large organizations, so that there's been lots of furloughs. Yeah. Right. And fair enough. I get it. Businesses are struggling and whatever. Yeah. But what's going to happen is organizations are going to, when we start to ease up, the sales teams are the ones that are going to suffer. because the management's going to say, okay, everything's back to normal, get out there and sell. And, you know, you had a £5 million number before we went into lockdown. Now that we're not in lockdown anymore, people are itching to buy, so go out and sell. But what they don't get is that every other company has been under stress also.
Yes.
Once we're no longer in lockdown and companies don't necessarily feel an obligation to keep their employees employed, they'll start letting them go. And what we're going to see, again, back to the shift, what we're going to see is what I call the great sales staff shift, where the guy from company B gets fired for not making his number. Guy from company A also gets fired for not making his number. And guess what? They turn up in each other's jobs. Still got a salesperson that didn't make his number, not by any fault of his own, but because of circumstances. And now you've got somebody that you have to train all over again, and you're going to have a year before he's any good, right?
Yeah.
And so businesses that make those mistakes are, I mean, because I don't think we've seen the worst of it hit business yet.
No.
They're going to make those mistakes, and they're just going to plunge deeper into the hole.
Yeah. So if you were advising our listeners about what skills they should be working on now, I think I can guess your answer, but I want to hear it. What skills do you think people should be focusing on? Because we've still got some time, haven't we, to think?
Yeah.
Learn.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I always ask my coaching clients, particularly in this time, is imagine that we come out of lockdown tomorrow. What do you wish you would have done while you were locked up?
Very good.
Right. It's going to be different for everybody, but you know, these kind of skills are never going to go amiss. You know, speaking skills, mentoring skills, leadership skills, you're never, ever going to be caught off guard if you develop those skill sets.
Okay. And slightly cheeky question, what's next for you? You know, you're thinking, you've always changed, so I can't imagine that's going to stop. What do you think's next for you?
I don't know. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I mean, I love the coaching work that I'm doing. I love the speaker training work that I do. I love the leadership training that I'm doing because I feel so what happened when I sort of ultimately made the shift and kind of dropped Hollywood, because I retired from Hollywood. December 2018 was the last job I did. And then I just hung it up. And the reason that I hung it up was because one of my coaches, that, you know, you got your fingers in a lot of pies, you know, what's your highest excitement, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought to myself, you know, that this MC stuff is fun. It's nice to be on telly. It's nice to, you know, get recognized sometimes. But it's not really changing lives.
Very good.
So whatever's next for me is going to be changing lives, because that's why we exist, to impact, to you know, have lasting change and influence on each other.
Yes, I think that's lovely. I heard, and I can't find who first said it, but someone said in the media that we need a new performance indicator, and that is return on humanity. Which is what you've just said. You know, it's it's lovely. It's lovely. Okay, well, we're coming to the end now, but I'd like to ask you just one or two final questions about how, you know, your experience can be, you know, you can give people a leg up who are listening to our podcast today. So if there was a book or a podcast or something that you would or a film, anything that you would recommend our people to watch, and I'm not limiting you to one, Brett, but you know, what would it be? What would you say to folk? Give yourself a leg up with this.
Yeah, I think, Team Human by Doug Rushkoff is probably the best book I've read in 10 years.
Wow, that's a recommendation. Right, okay.
Phenomenal. And he's got a podcast and blog as well. Rushkoff's a genius. Really, really like his stuff. Adam Alter as well. He wrote a great book called Influence, which I think I quoted in my TED Talk, in fact. Yeah. So if you've not read that, highly recommend anything by Adam Alter, really. Really, really good stuff. I'm always a Simon Sinek fan. I love Simon to death. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with him in London when he was in last time. And the thing, I mean, anytime I ever see him or anything, you know, he just says one thing and it just sort of resonates, but to kind of have a bit of one-on-one time. And I asked him, I said, Simon, so, you know, I do a lot of consulting. I go into organizations and I work with leadership teams and then I leave. I said, so how do you influence and impact when they're not your team? He said, Bret, what do you mean? They're all your team.
Very good.
Course to live by, man.
Very, very good.
They're all our team.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Gosh, that's got me thinking. Yes, okay, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
If our listeners would like to follow you or see your work, where would it be best for them to look?
It's pretty easy to find. You can Google Bret Freeman and find out, warts and all for sure. My company, Life Vroom, LIFEVROOM. You can get me at, Bret at Life Room. You can get Facebook Life Room or Bret Freeman. All the usual stuff.
Okay. Bret, it's been an absolute pleasure talking and seeing you today. And thank you. You've given us so many nuggets. And I'm off to read some books as a consequence. So
excellent. Good.
Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us on the Whole Man Academy podcast.
All right, Scott. Fantastic to see you. Lovely chat.
Thank you.